I'm so excited to have Kevin Farrell with us, author of some really interesting articles. In fact, one of them is about AI and L&D, three things to consider. And that's what we're going to talk about with Kevin. So have a listen.
All right, I'm so excited to have Kevin with us. This is going to be a great conversation. So, Kevin, can you start out by giving us a little bit of your background and how you help learning leaders?
Yes. Well, first, thanks for having me, Carl.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
It's definitely a thrill to be on the podcast. So in terms of background, probably kind of start with my father was a teacher for 38 years. Told me if I became a teacher, he'd kill me. So he always joked around that I found a way around it in the corporate education space. My background probably helps a little bit with a little context. So let me just share this video clip that has a few demos of stuff I've done in the past. Hold
Yeah,
on
fantastic. That'll be great.
Yeah, let me just share this up
Pop that
here.
up.
So I've always been fascinated about I would say, like targeting the right folks and making like learning experiences that have really intuitive. There's a lot of talk around LXPs now. Back in 2006, I think I was one of the first folks to put one of those together. What you're looking at here is the leadership development website when I was at Fidelity. And we were trying to find ways to train executives online, which was unheard of at the time. And really, what we did was we built what was a front end, and we were able to connect a variety of resources behind it, whether it was an LMS or so on. Video was still new then. YouTube had not really broken at that point. And we had used short videos to get content across, and it had a lot of high usage to it. We started doing stand up delivery videos like that as well, which I think was ahead of the curve at the time. And it was a really great experience. And we were also able to target leader level, which was big. First line leaders, mid-level leaders, and it was automated. So again, back then that was a big deal, right?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
We actually did it using compensation structure, so we could define the levels of leaders, and we had like a 98% accuracy,
Oh,
and we were
wow.
just able to build a lot of custom content in house with a relatively small team, and that was a really enjoyable process. And
Mhm.
looking back, I guess it was an LXP,
Yeah.
as we call it now. And
So,
then I
j-
went to a
can I interrupt
nonprofit
just for
after
a
that.
second?
Sure, yeah, no problem.
So, interestingly, so you targeted leaders based on their compensation level? Is that
Yeah,
what you mean? Like you find out, oh,
yeah,
you're making this level, so you must be this kind of leader. Is that how you use that data?
yeah. So typically, a lot of the like a company of that size, they'll have what they call like grade levels for salaries, which allows you, if you can, get to that level of data. You don't see the number. That's irrelevant, right? The dollar value. It's more the grade level. And we were able to just basically run that in the background. So when you went in there, there was really no login. It was single sign-on. So if you were logged into your desktop or your computer, it could gather that information and just simply show you what you needed to see, which was great because you know more is not better when it comes to learning. At least my opinion, you don't want to have a lot of content because it's just too many choices to make, right? It overwhelms the user. And at the time, that was a new way of thinking. A lot of folks at the time said, no, we need to give a lot of content. This allowed us to really streamline the content, right? So people could make like informed choices and have a really quality experience versus feeling like they're going to a library and trying to find the right content for them.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fantastic. That really is ahead of the curve, and what a great way to match the learning need to the level of the learner.
exactly, exactly. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and I actually went to the opposite end of the spectrum. When I left Fidelity, I went to a small nonprofit, and I started the L&D group there. One of the things that I took on was the performance management process, and took on the creation of the performance management process, but also a system to support that. And we started to talk about, okay, what would that system look like? And the idea was when you have to write a performance review, um, far too often you'll call HR, right? So if you're in that HR space, you're very used to getting phone calls from people saying, hey, I was just working on the performance review for one of my employees, not entirely sure. what should I write here? What should I do? All these questions start coming up frequently, right? So the idea with this was, could we create a scenario where those questions were asked as you were writing the review? And the idea was, as you looked at the objectives and you were answering the questions, it would give you a subset of questions and it would tag those answers and it would summarize them at the end of the review. So you could look at them as notes and say, hey, this is what the employee's strong at. Here's what they need help with. And then you could take that and you could begin to write, the performance summary, for lack of a better term. That was something that we ended up licensing to a sister company. We also took a step further with the video and started producing our own content. We took leaders from around the company and we had them speak to the things that they knew really well. And since we're a small nonprofit, that was a good thing to do because we're in a very unique industry. We're in energy efficiency industry at the time. And we had a lot of success with that approach. So I think the common theme for where I come from is the idea of really targeting the individual, creating a really great learning experience that cares for a lot of the decision making, I guess, for lack of a better term, and allows the person to get the exact content that they need. And
Yeah,
what
that's
I
fantastic.
found, what I
And
found over
very,
the years is
oh, go ahead.
well, what I found over
Yeah.
the years is data and AI
Mhm.
are making that more and more interesting.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. You've really been on the leading edge of innovation and really innovating to help learners get the exact information that they need. And there's a lot that goes behind that. And one of the things that you've been doing is recently is a lot of work with AI. And I came across your article on AI, and we've known each other for a while, but I'm like, wow, this is a really great article. And I know you've been speaking about AI, using it in your organization. I'm not going to ask you to divulge any
Sure.
top secret AI information, but let's start with the article. It's called AI Ready L&D, Three Factors to Consider. So what motivated you to start getting into AI as a learning professional? So a lot of people are, it's around the edges, or we're hearing about it, but you've actually dove into it quite a bit, and some of your background contributes to that as well. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think what led up to the interest in AI was around the data piece. So I was always fascinated with how you could leverage data to target people, and the the vision we had at Liberty starting in 2016 was right content to the right people at the right time. And the idea behind that is that you would use data intelligence, individual profiles to basically do just that, right? The right content to the right people at the right time. And we had some success with looking at business KPIs and targeting individuals based on level of performance. And what we found was that we got a very big lift when we targeted underperformers and we didn't train everybody. We only supported, not supported, but we basically, for lack of a better term, gave the medicine to the people who needed it, instead of giving everybody medicine, because that's really expensive. And sometimes folks really don't need it. They might need a different type of solution or a different form of development.
Right.
So by doing that, we were able to train less people, but have a much higher business impact. So
Oh,
you're
that's
just a lot more
fascinating.
efficient. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
you're a lot
great.
more
And
efficient.
if I'm not mistaken, you actually wrote an article about that, Kevin, didn't you?
Yeah, I wrote an article with my colleague Josh Keeley
Hmm.
about that. We collaborated on that effort, had a lot of great people in the team work on that, and it was something we were really proud of.
Yeah, it should
And
be.
to
That's
me,
fantastic.
and that was kind of the precursor to what I see the AI doing. AI kind of
Mhm.
takes it to a whole new level. So AI has been around for a long time, but I think OpenAI with ChatGPT has kind of made that more accessible, and it's also given it more of a practical application. So I would say around February timeframe, I started learning more about it. I was interested in it, but I actually told my whole team not to touch it. And the reason
Interesting.
why I had heard stories of Amazon engineers leveraging it, and then all of a sudden Amazon proprietary code, being spit out, a couple weeks later. So that was a big hesitation, right? Especially if you're in a big corporation, you don't want to, share information like that. So Liberty had gotten rules around it that we could follow, which was great. And as soon as that happened, then we started to really engage in it. And the article that you mentioned is really kind of the approach we took with it. The first one is that your vision and strategy should not be AI. It shouldn't be technology, right? Technology changes too fast. So you should have a vision and strategy, but your vision and strategy shouldn't be AI. And if you think about it, the vision I shared before around the right content, right people, right time, that doesn't mention technology or anything specific like that, right? And that's really the approach you want to take, because the technology just evolves too fast. The second piece is the data, right? If you think of AI as a car, data is the fuel. It's the fuel. And if anyone's driven a car that has like dirty fuel in it, or a lawnmower that you started, that has fuel left over from the year before, it doesn't run as well. Well, technically the same thing applies to AI. If your data is dirty, it's not going to go well. And a lot of us in the L&D profession understand what that looks like, because a lot of LMSs over time get very bloated. Mm-hmm. And they have a ton of data, but getting that data out and using that data is difficult, right? And that's really what you would look at as like a dirty versus clean data. And then the last one is people. So, this thing is evolving fast, number one. But number two, even to this day, you'll have folks that'll see it, especially in our business, and it's scary. Mm-hmm. Right? It's awe-inspiring. Yeah. Yes. It's awe-inspiring, but it's overwhelming, right, all at once, right? And you really got to get past that fear, because once you do, then you can start to evolve with the tool versus trying to catch up to it as it evolves.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I mean, so many interesting things to unpack there. One is I'll definitely link the AI article and your previous article in the show notes so people can check those out. Both of them are great articles. And then I love the analogy of fuel, because I think we were talking before and you said, the car's going to change, right? The car's going to get better. So you might start with a Yugo, and eventually we're going to get to, a Cadillac or a Lamborghini or something like that with AI, but the fuel is the same. Yeah. And I think that's such a strong analogy.
Yeah, that's the one thing. I often hear folks talk about the next version of chat GPT, or you look at all these different tools that are coming out around this generative AI. But the thing that really matters is the fuel. The tools will get better and better and better, but if you don't have the source fuel, the impact isn't going to be that high. And I can say, with a lot of confidence that our clean data approach has paid a lot of dividends for us.
Now, getting clean data is, you work in a large organization. I forgot to ask, the question of, where are you today and how did you get there? So if you want to just take a minute, but then I'm going to ask a little bit about, how long have you been after this clean data? How long does that take? What kind of parameters do you have to put into place? It seems like in some organizations, that's a really heavy lift.
Yes. So, okay. So let me start with the first part. So I left the nonprofit conservation services group and got an opportunity with Liberty Mutual. It was a great opportunity. I couldn't turn it down. I was really enjoying the time with conservation services group, but the Liberty opportunity was just really great. And it was a large L&D team that also had a communications component and knowledge management component, and it served a very wide audience. So it was just a great opportunity. So I went over to Liberty Mutual and ran that organization. And over the past few years, my roles kind of evolved and changed, and now I run instructional design development for one of the largest technical training organizations. So if you think about frontline sales, service, claims, my team's responsible for coming up with the learning solutions, right? Whether you're a new hire, and it's very job specific, right? So we're held accountable, for KPIs and performance in the field, as well as ongoing development in that technical space as well. So that's kind of where I live now, and how I got there. When I started there, that's when we started to push the right content, right people, right time approach, and the first step in that was really KPIs, and that was scary, right? I can remember I had a conference call with a lot of my peers across the company, and shared with them the strategy around, hey, I want to start, what we're going to do is start tracking KPIs and hold ourselves accountable with KPIs. And there's a lot of concern around that approach in the L&D world for obvious reasons, right? There's only so much you can control once someone is outside of your learning solution, for lack of a better term, or your program. And that's true. But at the same time, I believe that if L&D is going to move the needle, if L&D is going to provide the business the value that it should provide, then it should be grading itself and holding itself accountable to the same data all these other departments hold themselves accountable to. So at the time, it was very new. We had to really work with everybody to understand what we're trying to do, and we're going to use a common sense approach, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable. We're going to look at reality. Right? We're going to look at the full picture of things, and have like a shared responsibility with the business. And that ended up helping us get to those types of programs where we could target people by KPIs and provide like the right training to someone who's in need based on their individual need, versus like a peanut butter approach, right?
Right.
Where
Yeah.
everybody
No, I
gets
think
the
that's
same
great.
thing.
That's personalized learning again, that
Yes.
everyone is after. Like, how do we do that personalized learning? But picking people that need certain learning interventions and designing just for them, I think is a great way to maximize the resources of the L&D department and to improve the performance of people that are trying to do better. And if I guess the old saying, if you make training for everybody, it will help nobody. So I don't know if that's an old saying or not, but it sounds like it should be. But that kind of sense, I think is important. And so you've been kind of on the cutting edge of thinking about the data parameters and thinking about all that kind of thing. What type of rules or how did you get that data discipline in place?
It's a really good question. I think that's evolved
Mm-hmm.
over time. At first, we really, I think we tried to narrow the scope.
Mm-hmm.
So we partnered with areas of the business that had a desire to kind of follow this approach, which helped a lot. We learned from those types of things, and I think a lot of that was the kind of the precursor to where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, we were really focused on the KPIs, and we still are. But that idea of clean data, we've really pushed the envelope on the learning data.
Mm-hmm.
And having clean data from a learning approach. So I used the example with the LMS before, where there's challenges there. I think there's two ways you get clean data. You can either take your existing stuff and you can clean it, and that's an approach. And depending on how much you have, you should do that, right? Or maybe not, or maybe it's a both and.
Mm-hmm.
You can also harvest data. So you can set up a system where you're getting a series of data points in a manner that it's clean. I can do things with it. I can extrapolate a variety of things out of it. And over time, I can feed that, into AI or machine learning, and where we want to get is, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of predicting the future.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're very reactive, and we should be. Everybody in L&D is reactive, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the
Right.
result? What is the
Right.
KPI? How are you doing? Your students that you teach every day, what was their grade?
Right.
What did they get
Exactly.
on the test? And you have that result, and you can take that result, and it's a good thing because you can do something with it. You can go to close the gap, right, or improve that performance. But it's reactive. It's very reactive. If we take all this learning data, we take this KPI data, and we leverage AI, we can get to a point where we can anticipate a need before it happens. So instead of experiencing the bad performance or seeing it as a symptom of a problem and then trying to solve it, you can anticipate it coming. And the idea is you have an intervention before that even happens
Yeah,
to
that's
close it in
fantastic.
advance. That's the idea.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. The predictive, you hear the term predictive analytics, and lots of people throw it around maybe for businesses, but business competition or new products. But to think about it for performers in an organization, I go back to my days, statistical process control, right? And you look for not outliers, but trends. And I'm sure you could, with the right data, see trends of performance going down. The call's just a little bit longer and it keeps getting longer and longer and longer. Maybe that's the time to do an intervention or something like that. So, yeah, I think
Exactly.
that's a wonderful way to think about using some of these tools.
Absolutely. And I think AI, L&D is not alone in the impact AI is going to have. It's far beyond anything I think I've ever experienced before. A lot of times I think any success I've had in the past is I look for innovation outside of L&D. So I'm fascinated by what's going on, from an innovation perspective or a technology perspective, and then looking at that and saying, okay, how can this apply? So from an AI perspective, a lot of times what I'll do is I listen to long form podcasts. I subscribe, and on LinkedIn I'll follow the AI groups and things like that. And some of these articles and so on, and some of these things, they're very dense. There's a lot in there. So the idea is listening, following, learning as much as possible, and trying to identify these components. I say, well, wait a minute, I think we could apply that in our world, or that seems to make sense for what we're trying to do, and so on. It's also understanding the pitfalls of it. It hallucinates. It lies. Not. I don't think it's intentional, right? But
Right.
my daughter did a state fair.
Uh-huh.
So the local school here, basically, you get assigned a state, and you have to basically do like a presentation on it. And that includes a whole myriad of things, but one of them includes famous residents. And my daughter is a fan of gymnastics. So she did, I believe it was the state of Virginia. And the person she highlighted was the first Black Olympic gold medalist.
Mm-hmm.
She was really excited about it. And I had ChatGPT up at the time, and she was asking like a question about that individual. So I just typed in the question of, who was the, first Black gold medalist gymnast from the state of Virginia?
Mm-hmm.
And it said, well, to date, no one has won the gold medal, in gymnastics from Virginia. And it was so weird because immediately I followed it with, "Are you sure?" And then boom, "I'm sorry, I apologize. Actually, that's true." Well, and it started spitting out like the accurate answer. So it's
You
not
caught
always
it in a
right.
lie.
I caught it in a lie, right? But it does that a lot,
Corrected
So
itself. Yeah.
yeah. So the generative piece is the piece to me that holds a lot of promise, but it also holds a lot of risk.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you need the clean data. The more facts you have and you feed it the facts that you know to be true, the better result you'll get from it versus just telling it to create something opens you up to a lot of risk
Right. Now that
because
makes perfect
it's
sense.
creating
Yeah.
something.
Right. Right. And organizations really, if they, there's a big discussion in the industry, and ChatGPT recently did this. And I know a lot of companies that have some kind of version of, I think PricewaterhouseCooper has a chat PWC, for
Sure.
example, right? So they're kind of putting it behind the firewall.
Yes.
But to your point, even if you put it behind the firewall, if you don't have good data there, the consultants at PwC aren't going to get good results because the data is not clean. So it's not just a matter of putting it into your organization and going, oh, it's safe, it's clean. It's really a matter of, okay, if we're going to put it in there and we're going to teach the large language model some new data because we want it to be proprietary,
Yeah.
we really need to think about how that data, if it's real. And I know a lot of organizations whose, you know, uh, L&D record keeping and even LMS record keeping is not where it
Oh
should
yeah.
be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in fact, one of the presentations I did, I mentioned the LMS piece, and everybody laughed. It's a
Mhm.
common challenge that everyone has. Any large organization, actually large or small, it really any LMS that's been around for a few years, it's part of the business model, right? The business
Yeah.
model is okay. You adopt this LMS and you care for it and you use it for tracking and all these things, but it accumulates a lot of information over time, and you have a lot of people putting data into it over time, and that doesn't mean that the data is always complete, doesn't mean they're always putting in like the same things. And if you want to test that theory, all you got to do is export a report, and all of a
Right.
sudden you see this huge file with all these things. So it's a common thing that we all deal with in this profession. And I think that to me is one of the biggest reasons why it's so important for us as an industry to double down on the data, because these tools are only as powerful as the gas you feed them.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy, and data is so important and so critical, and something that, you know, in the past it might have not been that critical that the data wasn't, that good,
Sure.
but now with AI, and if you want to try to do, as you said, predictive AI and having real information, it becomes more critical than ever. And I think that's the conversation. Like, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I think a lot of people aren't really thinking of the data aspect of it, right? They're just thinking,
Yeah.
oh, look what it can do. And, I mean, you probably have some L&D folks, who as you said before, in the field, who are nervous about all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then people say, well, what new jobs are going to be out there? Well, I think a lot of jobs related around data accuracy and LMS data accuracy and guidelines for inputting data or metadata, meta tags. I mean, all that's going to become so critical
Yes.
to the future of our field.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be. I see it being one of those things that's a priority.
Hmm.
Where, to your point, you know, what did you really want to get out of LMS, over the past several years? Well, did they take it or not? Like,
Hmm.
that was important, right? There's legal requirements and whatnot, compliance requirements to know that folks took a training, and that was the biggest, most valuable piece of it. And there was ways of going beyond that, and folks certainly have. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, the idea of cleaning the data upwards of 2, 5, 10 years ago was, wow, why would I want to invest time and money in something like that? I have a limited budget, I have to be business focused and so on. Where now I think that tune is changing, if not already.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to change direction just a little bit, you're a successful L&D leader. You've had really cutting edge ideas, concepts, and things that you've implemented. You're in a large organization. What are some of maybe the methods or habits that you use to become a leader in the field and to stay a leader and stay ahead of what's happening?
Well, first, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I feel like I've worked with a lot of really smart people that I benefit from, that have
Mhm.
kind of mentored me and given me a lot of insight into different things. Um, a few people come to mind, like Mike Glass. I think he's at Thermo Fisher now. He was someone that I had the opportunity to kind of get in touch with when he was a new leader at Fidelity. He was somebody that really got me excited about learning and development, got me excited about like what it could be. E-learning was just trying to become a thing, and he was always interested in pushing the envelope, and there's a better way to do this, and let's find a way to do it. And it wasn't about being scared of something or whatever. It was about like, okay, what can this accomplish? Let's explore it and figure it out. But at the same time, balancing that with some business sense, right?
Mhm.
Well, how much does this cost? And what's the budget for it? And what can we get out of this and so on? And those two things have served me really well. Clemia Britnum is someone who's been a mentor to me in a variety of ways, especially in the leadership space, as well. So I've had the luxury. I mean, I can go on and on with folks that have influenced me in a lot of ways, that have just helped me in many ways. I would say, based on those names and other folks, I think what makes you successful is, having that curiosity, wanting to learn, being open to trying something different. As plain as that sounds, it's really important, especially the more experience you get, because it's very easy to get set in your ways. It's very easy to get comfortable. And that's what you don't want to do. You want to run at the things that are new and innovative, especially the things that can scare you, like AI. You
Right.
want to run to it. You don't want to run away from it. That is the wrong move. I can assure you of that. You want to understand it, right? That's the first thing. The other piece of it is just the understanding the business. Um, Understanding the business to me is very important. Having business acumen is very important. Speaking the language of the business, especially in the environment I'm in that corporate environment, or that business environment, it's so critical because we are passionate about what we do. I love what I do. I know you love what you do. And I think we have a lot of colleagues that feel the same way.
Right.
Why would you be in this industry if you didn't have that love of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you have to recognize that not everybody has that same passion,
Right.
right? And if you walk into a room and you're doubling down on L&D theory and terminology and all these things, that is not what motivates the business. What motivates the business is results. What motivates the business is, this is my problem, this is my gap, this is my objective. How are you going to help me solve that? How much is that going to cost me? What is going to be the impact of it? What does that look like? So I think between the curiosity and wanting to try different things, but at the same time recognizing the business side of it and being able to speak that language, I think both of those have served me well.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And understanding the business is so critical. And I think, like you said, a lot of L&D people are passionate about L&D and not as passionate about the business. But being as passionate about the business, I think, can really help with the L&D, aspect and things like that. So, um, as we kind of wrap up, just a couple more questions. One is, to go back to AI for just a second.
Sure.
Um, Two things. One, where do you think AI is headed, and do you see any L&D functions that really can't be augmented or assisted with AI?
Um, I think AI, and this sounds like one of those, you know, headline terms to get clickbait, right? But
Mhm.
it is going to impact everything at some level.
Mhm.
So like I said, like beyond L&D, and the reason why I say that is, for me, when I started to look at it that way, my manager and I were talking about this, and he brought up the point before I did. He was like, it's going to impact all these different things. I think as soon as you come to grips with that aspect of it,
Mhm.
that helps with kind of navigating it and
Mhm.
adopting it and understanding it, because we're not alone in this great evolution, for lack of a better term, right? Everybody's
Right.
going along with this right now. So that's the first piece. I think in terms of what it will do, my belief is that it becomes a predictor of needs. But AI has a lot of slices, right?
Mhm.
So content, like creating content, we've been messing around with that a lot and looking at where it can help us be more productive. Idea generation. Um, I haven't found a lot of instructional designers that enjoy and like to spend a lot of time on assessment making, right? And coming up with distractor questions and things like that. I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of things there that it can do that are pretty good, so
Yeah.
there's while there's still going to be like some fear here or there, what I've often found is that there's a lot of things it's going to do that aren't the funnest stuff to do,
Mhm.
and it's going to allow you to focus on the things that I think are more challenging, and in some ways more interesting. I don't think it will ever replace the relationship building or understanding the culture of the environment and those aspects of the problem. So there's certain things that it's limited on. But what I'm often finding is the things that it's really good at, not all the time, but more often than not, are the things that aren't exactly exciting for us. They're not the things that we wake up in the morning and say, I can't wait to do this. I can't write a 100 question assessment, right? And with all these
Right.
distractor answers and so on and so forth. Um, so I think in a way it'll do a lot for us. It'll take away the stuff that annoys us and is boring and allow us to focus on the things that are much more interesting, much more complex, and allow us to evolve to, better solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, and it's a wonderful way to think of it as augmenting what we do on a daily basis and allowing us to maybe accelerate that. You could write the distractors more quickly or write the objectives more quickly, but
Exactly.
but to your point, you're not gonna AI is not going to have the relationship with the line of business. They're not going to have the relationship with your subject matter experts.
Yeah.
That's still um, the territory of the human.
The analogy I've used with folks on my team and others, and even some presentations I've done, um, especially when folks are they have that anxiety about it, they're a little scared of it. Is what I'll say to them is, if I gave you an axe, could you chop down a tree? I mean, you know what an axe does, right?
Mhm.
Do you know how to hold it? You can pick it up. You could buy one at Home Depot. So, if I gave you an axe, could you chop down a tree? And believe it or not, the answer is no. Because if you go on YouTube, you see a lot of people that try to chop down a tree and probably knock their house over, right? So, okay. The point of that is that an axe doesn't make you a lumberjack, and ChatGPT does not make you an instructional designer. However, if I take that same analogy and you're a lumberjack and you love that axe and you hold on to it, but another lumberjack comes along with a chainsaw and they're chopping down more trees than you, more effectively and cleaner than you are, and you refuse to adopt the chainsaw, then you're probably going to be out of a job, right? So
Right.
be the lumberjack that adopts the chainsaw, get to know it, find out where it makes you more productive, get to learn these things, and you can get past that fear and evolve with these things and have fun with
Yeah, I think that's I think that's a great way to lead, have fun with it. First of all, I love your analogies. They're awesome.
them.
Very clear and I like them a lot. And so one other tool, I guess, to become a learning leader is come up with these really cool analogies. So that's a lesson I'm taking away, Kevin. But I just want to thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful, very insightful, and I think very helpful to a lot of people that are learning leaders looking at AI and people that are individual contributors thinking of becoming learning leaders and thinking about how AI fits into the big picture. So thanks, Kevin. Any last words?
No, that's it. This is what the old proverb is: "May you live in interesting times." I think we are. I
I
think we
think we
are
are.
right now. So I'm looking forward to it. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.